Thank you for downloading this podcast from the British Theatre Guide. For more information about British Theatre Guide, please visit britishtheatreguide.info. Every year, the Edinburgh Fringe programme features a lot of solo performances, including some that look at the lives of well-known people from history or popular culture. Occasionally, these shows will take off in a big way and continue to tour. 3 of those are Bob Golding as Eric Morecambe in Tim Whitnall's play Morecambe from 2009, Damian Williams as Tommy Cooper in Being Tommy Cooper by Tom Green from 2012, and Simon Cartwright as Bob Monkhouse in The Man Called Monkhouse by Alex Lowe from 2015. Writer-director Paul Hendy, founder of leading pantomime producer Evolution Productions, brought these 3 performers together for a film short called The Last Laugh in 2017, which imagines a meeting of the 3 comics in a theatre dressing room. He has now extended this for a stage production featuring the same cast, which will be performed in Edinburgh in August. I met with all 4 of them over Zoom just as Paul was putting the finishing touches to the script. Note that Paul's voice breaks up a bit when his connection goes a bit flaky, but I left it in for the reactions from the others. First, though, I had to mention Paul's recent award for Best Script at the Pantomime Awards a few days earlier for Aladdin at the Marlow Theatre in Canterbury. Paul, congratulations on your Panto Award, which is...
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, thrilled. You know, it's great to be recognised for anything, isn't it? And, you know, obviously pantomime, every theatre in the country has a pantomime. So to be considered one of the best is brilliant. Yeah, absolutely thrilled.
Yeah. Well, the chair of the Panto Association, Simon, is our Panto editor. He's been with us for many years.
Oh, okay.
All the years.
Small world.
Simon's, Damian and I, Simon's lovely, actually, as you know, and he invited Damian and I to the V&A to see the Tommy Cooper collection when he took charge of the Tommy Cooper collection.
Oh, yeah, fantastic.
Huge.
Fantastic.
And all these literally boxes and boxes of letters from Myth, who was Tommy's agent, you know, complaining about Tommy. And a lot of people think they were, you know, what is this? Just a load of old paper. Damien and I spent hours there, didn't we, Jay?
Yeah. There was some amazing stuff. There was some of the old props, all the old tricks. But a lot of the letters made sense. You could because they didn't know what to do with the archive. And Simon said, "What is this?" And we sort of went through it and went, "Oh, well, that's that, and that's that. You put that with that, and that goes with that." So it's really good.
It was brilliant. It was brilliant.
Yeah. It was a good day.
Okay, we've got 3 of the greatest comedians all together, and you've all played them before. But what's the story that brings them all together, Paul?
So the idea is that it's a dressing room, and we find Tommy Cooper there in the dressing room, and then Bob Monkhouse comes in, and then Eric comes in, and it's the 3 of them just sitting there discussing life, death, comedy, what it means to be funny, really sort of analysing comedy, really, and the difference in approaches to comedy, because each of them, you know, they were undoubtedly funny men, but Tommy, you could argue, was just naturally funny, innately funny, couldn't help but be funny. And Damien and I were discussing it today, actually, just didn't really understand why he was funny. I don't think he was a complicated man. He was just a funny man, so naturally funny. Eric, you know, was brilliant, you know, a comedy genius, but arguably would need a script, you know, famously throughout Morecambe and Wise's career, they needed writers, you know, they didn't come up with it. Bob Monkhouse, obsessive, you know, compulsive, is drive to make something funny, brilliant writer, brilliant deliverer of gags, and I'm sure Simon would agree, but maybe, and this is Bob's own words, you know, not a naturally funny man, had to work at being funny. So those 3 different approaches to comedy has always fascinated me. You know, what makes something funny? And it's just, you know, I wrote this and directed it as a short film. I don't know how many years ago it was. It's probably 7 years ago.
7 years.
Yeah, 7.
7 years ago. Amazing, you know, and it did the film festival circuit and did really well, even in places like Los Angeles, where they probably didn't know Tommy Cooper and Eric Morecambe and Bob Monkhouse. So I've just always thought since then there's something in this as a play. You know, there's more to be mined about these 3 characters who were brilliant, you know, icons, legends, but also just that idea of what makes somebody funny and why why are we talking about these three comedians still 40 years ago? I mean, Eric and Tommy died 40 years ago this year, and yet we're still having conversations about them. I'm writing a play about them. You still see documentaries about them, and it's like, okay, what is the fascination? Why are we fascinated with these characters? So that is the sort of driving force behind it, I think.
And how is the play different from the original film? Because the film was quite short, wasn't it? About 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And why has it taken 7 years?
Yeah, it's longer.
He's a very slow writer.
One letter at a
Just
time.
very big letters, very big words.
Yeah. No, it is long, and it just goes into more detail, really. I think you find out a little bit more about them. There's an argument maybe that in the short film, which I'm very proud of, we're all incredibly proud of, do you get to know the characters as well in 19 minutes? Well, maybe not. So I would like to think that by the time people leave the theatre, they will know a little bit more about the character. And what I would love is, what I want it to be is like, this is what it would be like to sit in a dressing room with these three characters, because I think it would have been like this. I really do, and as you know, and I'm not just saying this because they're on the Zoom, but they're, Damian, Bob and Simon are brilliant. They really are brilliant in their own right, but particularly brilliant at these characters. They really are. They are these characters. Simon, you see Simon, he is Bob Monkhouse. Gary Morecambe, who's Eric's son, says about Bob Golding, he's my dad. That's Eric's son saying, Bob Golding is my dad. That's what he was like. Damian is Tommy Cooper, and it's like, and we've got the three of them. Bob Golding said it's like a super group almost, but it's, I want it to be, what was it like to sit in, what would it have been like to sit in a dressing room with these three comedians? And hopefully we've got that. We get an essence of that, We'll never know for sure, but I think it would be something like this, maybe. So.
Yeah. And the three of you, you've been playing these parts for quite a long time now. I was looking on our website. We've got a Being Tommy Cooper review going back to 2012.
Yeah,
You've had plenty of time to sort of soak up the character, but he's not a character, it's a real person, isn't it? So how do you feel like you can be pretty much, the three of you, that you're pretty much acting, you feel like you're acting instinctively like the real person would?
Yeah, I think that's the thing with us. We all, the three of us, we approach it as actors rather than impressionists. Because as you know, everyone does an impression of Tommy Cooper. Everyone did. Everyone did it, famously on telly. Every impressionist did it, and everyone does it in the street. But, with Eric Morecambe as well from Bob's, Eric Morecambe and Simon's, as Paul rightly said, you think, I saw Simon play Bob Monkhouse, and I'm in the play that Bob directed, and I remember turning to Paul in the interval saying, I'm not convinced that I'm not watching Bob Monkhouse like that. And the first time I'd met him. I think that we do approach them as actors and try to be them rather than just, because I think if you try to do them as an impression, you'd get lost and it'd be very, it'd get complicated. Whereas approaching them as an actor, and actually becoming them is the way that we do it. So, yeah.
And also, it's kind of fair to say that we don't approach it flippantly. No. We realised that we're dealing with people that the public loved. So we've got to deal very carefully with how we present the characters and how we research them. And as you said, we've played them. We each have played these characters before, but that's not to take lightly. Oh, well, we can easily do it again. For certainly for myself, it was 15 years ago when I was in Edinburgh with the first version of the play. And so to revisit him again, I mean, Eric's always been on the periphery for me, but I don't go home and say, hello, love, how are we? All right. Hey, you forget it for a while. And then you're getting back into it. And of course, the other aspect is it's a massive honor to play one's hero, one's comedy hero. So, and even though we're not saying what we are as funny or, exactly like these idols of British comedy, we are treating it with kid gloves and respectfully. And it's a huge honor just to be doing that,
Well, that's the thing. They are our heroes. So it is sort of like our love letter. So we do want to get it right. We do work against it right. We don't want it to be seen as cheap and insulting. We want it to be as perfect as we can get it.
And Simon, didn't Bob Monkhouse actually say to you, "You do me better than I do now"?
Yeah, that was one of his kinder comments. But just floating on the top of what the guys have said, I think for me, it's also maturity has really helped. I mean, I've been doing impressions of Bob since I was 24 years old. The irony is that I think I'm at 58, the age that Bob is just about represented in Paul's play. So I do find that life's journey and maturity does, if you have more reserves to draw on actually and to drop into the character. So I'm much more kind of, I won't say relaxed, but I can just meditate on the character a bit more and find Bob with much more ease. It's definitely method acting for sure, because you're accessing experiences and emotions, and some of those things I've had parallels in my life with Bob, which has always made it so much easier to tap into. But I think for all of us, it's just that it's matured. It's always there. It's always part of our psyche, and we draw it back. And depending where we are in our lives and how we've matured, I think it just enriches our interpretation. I mean, I remember watching Mr. Golding running around. I think I came to stalk him about 5 times at various points when he was on tour. And, high octane. I still to this day, Bob, don't know how you did it. You must have been knackered at the end of every show. You were high. It was brilliant. And I'm just thinking, I can't wait to see you do your stuff now, because I bet you it's got another edge to it as well. It'll be just as exciting. Another edge,
but perhaps, as you say, a bit more mature and less high energy.
Yeah, sure.
Given that I'm 54 now and approaching Eric was when he passed on. So,
well, that's true. That's true. Yeah. That's interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, it's fair to say that Paul's play is written specifically around the last potential gig they ever did.
Yeah.
So that's what gives it edge.
I mean, a lot of people don't realise, Tommy and Eric, they died within a month of each other.
Yeah,
pretty much
3 weeks. Yeah,
which is incredible to lose two, giants to comedy. So close to each other was, tragic. It really was, and they were very young. I mean, if you see, I'm 57. Eric was 58 when he died. You see photographs of Eric, and no disrespect to Eric, I think everybody looked older in those days, didn't they? But you can't believe that Eric was only 58. It's so sad. And Tommy was only in his 60s, I think, a day. Was he 64?
Yeah, he was 64, wasn't he?
There's a lovely connection that I think Tommy's last TV was recorded on the Bob Monkhouse show, which was like a fortnight or so, I believe, or something like that, before he actually died at on stage at Her Majesty's. So Bob would have been late 50s, early 60s, but would have had Tommy's last performance piece, at the
famous one with
the Shepherd's Bush Theatre. Yeah,
with the chicken feet. That's the chicken
Absolutely.
Feet, which is a famous, which, funnily enough, I just put in the latest draft. So Tommy Cooper entered in wearing chicken feet on the Bob Monkhouse show. And I remember my mum crying with laughter. And these memories sort of stay with you, don't they? And
it's nice to know they were friends as well. It's lovely because there's lots of interviews and talking heads where Bob is recounting lovely moments and memories of being with Tommy. So we've got some real credible narrative there, I think, haven't we, to draw on? Yeah.
And as the guy said, you'll see, David, we're all genuine fans. It's, and not just fans, we love these guys. We've grown up with them. And I think I speak for everybody. They've sort of influenced not just our careers, but our lives. Certainly in my case, I was
I've lost you a bit there, Paul.
That actually is him talking. That's how he talks.
I think for Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Quick, are you writing this down? There's great material here.
All right, we got you back.
Paul just gave away all the secrets. So
we're all about the same age, because I'm similar age to you. I turned 56 recently, so we're all similar age. Paul,
I hope we make the run.
Well, yeah, better than some of your characters, hopefully, yeah. But Paul, I was wondering whether there's something about that era, because last year you were directing Lena, about Lena Zavaroni, which is another name from my childhood. So is there something about that era of variety which doesn't really exist anymore, does there? Is there something about that really appeals to you?
Yeah, I think there is, really. Once again, it really influenced me. It's what I grew up watching, what I grew up loving. I think it's no surprise that I've ended up, producing and writing and directing pantomimes, which arguably is it's sort of the evolution. My company's called Evolution, the evolution of all that variety. It's where you still do get variety. You get actors, you get comedians, you get dancers, you get special acts, you get all of that. Okay, wrapped up in a story, but that's where you find variety these days, in the truest sense. And that undoubtedly comes from, my love in the 70s and 80s of watching all these greats. Yeah. And the Lena show, which was in Edinburgh last year, it was great. It's what inspired me to make this actually, into a play, because I watched what Tim Whitnall did with that, and it was like, oh, I think we could do that with The Last Laugh. So yeah, it's something about that era, being very special to all of us, I think.
And all three of you played these parts before, but in solo shows, which are quite a solo show is quite a demanding thing to be stood on stage on your own for an hour. So is this better to have that support on stage, or did you feel a bit more responsibility?
I'm just going to ignore the other two.
Yeah, no change there, though.
Yeah, no change. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think to answer it seriously, I think we have to. This is a much nicer experience. One thing I can certainly speak of after doing many versions of Morecambe and touring it around the country. England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, on your own, to have other actors there to enjoy and to gripe with, and to feel that share the pain is a huge relief, really, and also who they are. I'm really excited about this project, and also working with Paul again. With as Paul says, one of our favourite subject matters. So it's a lovely thing to be able to do.
Yeah. And also, I feel that it feels, when the three of us are doing it, it's very warm. I think it's very it feels nice. It feels like when I did Being Tommy Cooper, it was about him, it was about the dark side, really. It was about the affairs and him being the drink problem and the arguments with Myth and all so we touched on the dark side a lot. And whereas this feels like it's funny and it's warm and it's poignant and it's a nice feel. I love doing it, and even reading the script, it feels, if great, it's going to be a great atmosphere, I think, in the theatre when we do it.
I'm very excited because for me, it's almost real. I'm quite excited to meet Bob Monkhouse again. I know that sounds a bit weird, but genuinely, he's going to be mustered up, and I'm really excited about seeing Eric and Tommy, because it's going to be real for that month in Edinburgh. This is reality. It can't be anything else for me. So I'm really excited that I'm going to be seeing these three guys again, and I can't believe I'm in it as well. I have to remember that. No, it's just very exciting to be reunited with them. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, and it's fair to say that even though we are talking about each other's characters' comedy approaches, you can't really dissect what makes someone funny. We do question that, don't we, Paul, in that process? But as Barry Cryer said, dissecting comedy is like a bit like dissecting a frog. Nobody laughs and the frog dies. So essentially, but we sort of tickle it and tease it, because really it's an art form, and art is in the eye of the beholder. So to almost open the door of secrets of what made them funny is almost giving away too much. It was just a natural thing certainly for Tommy and Eric, and the technical side, and as Paul says, the obsession from Bob Monkhouse is just unbelievable. I mean, he was the first man in the UK to have a VHS recorder, wasn't he, Simon?
Absolutely, and it still works apparently.
Wow.
It cost the price of a car. That's right. It was like a reel to reel. It was a spool thing. So he was taping material, because I remember his back garden. He had this giant satellite dish. I mean, it wasn't like a Sky dish of nowadays. This massive NASA construction. So he was beaming in American TV, some of the quiz shows, mid to late 60s. And then he was starting to take this material, in the very early 70s. It was really interesting because a lot of his early stuff, like when he took over hosting Sunday Night at the London Palladium, the Val Parnell years, ATV routinely wiped a lot of that material. It was never archived and saved, but good old Bob, was just routinely recording everything. And I don't think he actually knew what he was going to do with it. And I think somebody once said he actually didn't have enough years in his life to have ever been able to have watched it all back. But it was there. It's actually there, and wonderful. I think Kaleidoscope and the British Film Institute have got some of it, but I think sadly some of it just had to be. I remember talking to Abigail, his daughter, who just said it's the dustbin, I'm afraid, because we just cannot. 50,000 video cassettes. What the hell are we going to do? But there you go. Yeah. The sign of how he was. Kleptomania.
What happened to the books? Where did the books go?
So the books went to Colin Edmonds, his head scriptwriter. He bequeathed them in his will. Yeah. So obviously he had 2 nicked that got returned, but there were 16 ledgers altogether, and they all went to Colin, who looks after them with in fine fettle, as it were.
Yeah.
No, my dad saw all the greats over his time. I mean, he even saw the tail end of the Crazy Gang back in the early days.
We were talking about the Crazy Gang earlier.
Right. Yeah. And he always insisted that Bob Monkhouse was the best stand-up comic he ever saw live. And he said you just never got that impression he never came across quite as well on screen, though he did a lot of TV.
Well, we say that in the play, actually, what a master he was of that. And, a delivery, but also he would craft a joke. He would really own it and try to get it down to the least amount of words as possible to really just make it funny. Really, he's sort of obsessed, didn't he, Simon?
I think he was the country's best club comedian ever. He just honed the art of the nightclub. And, what set him apart from the comedians in terms of the northern comedians was that I think he was more esoteric. He was above and beyond and could draw from so many different sources of material. But I mean, he was a master manipulator, and he could adapt his act. He had so much material stored that he could just go, okay, it's that kind of audience tonight. I'm going to jump to this stuff, or I need to slow down a bit. And nobody else had that control and that material to draw on. He was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And I saw him live in performances. I think his other USP was that everyone associated him with very sort of middle class, safe. He called it sort of sanitized pap on television, those sort of shiny floor game shows. So when you then saw him live and he'd be a little bit racy and a little bit naughty, it gave you that double kick. You go, oh my goodness, that's Bob being a bit rude there. And it gave you a double whammy.
Yeah. Another story that my dad told me, he had a friend who was in a resident band I'm not sure if it was at Man City Social Club, it was somewhere in Manchester. And Bob Monkhouse, whenever he played there, he'd always have a drink with the band, except one time he couldn't, and he left them a note and apologised and left some money for them to get a drink. He always looked after the band, which is always a good thing to do if you're a club comic.
Tommy just left the tea bag.
I've got a different story about Tommy. Apparently once he didn't finish his bottle of whiskey, and they said, could I give the rest of that to the lads in the vault? And he stood there and watched them pour it down the sink. He made them pour it down the sink because he didn't want to give it away.
No. Really?
Well, that's not in our play.
No.
No. We drink it. Yeah.
We make the audience drink it.
Damian, do you have any backstage stories about what he was like? Because he could be quite changeable, couldn't he, Tommy?
Well, yeah. I mean, particularly towards the end. I mean, you can tell if you watch any of the clips of him on, particularly at the end of the Bob Monkhouse show, you can tell that he's had a drink, and some of the Parkinson stuff he's done. He's been interviewed. You can see he's had a couple of drinks, and he starts to get slow. Like there's a famous clock trick he used to do, and there was someone put it on YouTube like 20 years before, and then how he was doing it now, and it was so slow. You can see, and he was in a lot of pain by then as well. His legs were killing him, his feet were killing him. He had all sorts of, the doctors were saying, don't drink, don't smoke, but he still did it. So, but I mean, I did get a lot of stories. People phoned me. There's that famous Bob Monkhouse story where they were on the tube. Do you know that one?
Beautiful story.
That bloke gets on, the homeless guy, and he's got a horrible dog under his arm. To everyone. He's trying to get money for everyone and to get some food. And he gets to Bob and says, "Oh, have you got any money?" And Bob says, "Oh, no, I haven't got any money." And he goes to Tommy, "Have you got any money? I need to eat." And Tommy just turns to him and goes, "Eat the fucking dog." So,
yeah, that's our opener for the play, isn't it?
Yeah, that's
it. It is interesting. They obviously were flawed. Of course they were. They were humans. They were all flawed, and we touch on it. I mean, ultimately, I would say this is a love letter to the three of them, to the golden age of what I think is, British comedy. But at the same time, they were human beings, and they, whatever was going on in their personal life. Tommy famously, was married, happily married, but also, his personal assistant was supposedly his partner as well, so I imagine that was quite a complicated life he was leading, And we touch on it. We certainly don't ignore it, but we only touch on it lightly. We try to present them as, rounded individuals, and towards the end of the play, we try to analyse what makes them these people, without, hopefully with a light touch, hopefully not too heavy, but at the same time, how many people go away thinking, "Oh wow, I didn't know that," but also maybe hopefully loving them a little bit more. That's what I'd like anyway.
Yeah.
And maybe understanding a bit more.
They all had family lives as well, which, I mean, you probably know yourselves as performers that the work can sometimes clash with family lives, but I think it was probably more so for them. Do you think that they had such punishing schedules constantly of touring?
Yeah. Well, Mary, who was his mistress, famously was his mistress. So Dove used to just stay at home, and Mary was like his assistant. But she used to just look after him as well. Like she'd cook, but he didn't want to eat out. He didn't want to go to restaurants after we'd done a show. So she used to travel like this little stove, and she used to just cook in the hotel rooms, because he'd eat simple, like he'd want steak, kidney pie and chips, and he'd want, and that's, so she would literally do everything for him. She'd set the props up, and she'd cook for him and make sure he was on, get his drinks and everything else. So, she was sort of like his personal assistant, really, as well as his mistress.
Yeah, and I think, and obviously, Eric was very driven by his family, a very family-orientated man. I mean, I think that was what he needed. He needed that anchor in life to even it out, and recently we just lost Joan, his wife, who outlived him by 40 years. Crazy, really, that she's longer alive after Eric died than she was before. Certainly that was with him. But family was such an important part to Eric's life, and I think without that, convexly with Ernie just had Doreen, his wife, and a dog, and that was it. They'd never had any children, so the legacy, I think one of the reasons why Eric's legacy has lived on is because of his family roots, and because he was so accessible like that. Everyone felt they had an Uncle Eric in their family, someone who would learn the paper bag trick or waggle their glasses or just have that little glint in the eye. We could all relate to it. And so that family accessibility made it able for us all, with my grandparents, with little uns and all that, to be laughing at the same joke. That's so rare for then, and even more rare now.
Yeah. Even to be watching the same screens, probably rarer now, but...
Yeah.
Yes.
The big difference with Eric, of course, is he was part of a double act, unlike the other two. And I wonder Ernie didn't really do a great deal after Eric died. He made a few appearances. And what would have happened if it had been the other way around? Do you think Eric could have made it on his own?
I often wonder that. And surprisingly, I would say, I don't think so either. He needed Ernie there professionally, even though they didn't spend an awful lot of time together.
I think he would have done more than Ernie. I think he could have worked alone. I mean, we mention it in the play that he felt it's another thing that he feels he needed Ernie, didn't he? He was his squad, and maybe Eric wasn't driven. Bob Monkhouse was incredibly driven, and had this drive and this ambition. Well, in Morecambe and Wise, it was Ernie who was the drive and the ambition. Arguably, Eric bore the talent, not that Ernie wasn't talented, but Eric was the talent and Ernie was the drive and the ambition. I think Eric would have carried on, but maybe would have been an elder statesman of British comedy, and he would have hosted "Have I Got News for You" and all those sort of things, wouldn't he? I think Eric would have worked more than Ernie did, personally. Do you not think, Bob?
Well, yeah, I mean, he famously said, I've got an interview somewhere on Pebble Mill at One, where it's just Eric on his own. It's very rare to see him just on his own, and he famously said, it's all based on fear. And there's so much fear involved in comedy. I think even so now I'm currently sharing a dressing room in a play that I'm doing with a stand-up comic. And he said, when you hear his angst, it is based on, oh God, are they going to hate me? Is this going to be awful? And that real fear just keeps you on your toes. And I think if Ernie had gone first and left Eric, I think that fear would have been a big part of Eric's life, because as Paul says, he relied heavily on material from other people, and meticulously rehearsing things. I mean, one of the famous stories about Andre Previn for that sketch was that he couldn't make the rehearsals because he was busy and then turned up for the shoot. And Eric was so nervous about all this. And I love the moment in the actual sketch when Andre Previn says, "Oh, I'll just fetch my baton. It's in Chicago." And that moment with the little beat and the little timing, you can see Eric go, "Thank God, he's funny. He's good. He knows what he's doing," because it couldn't have gone the other way, and they would have had egg on their face. But yeah, fear, I think, would have been a big part of it. And I think maybe you're right. He would have been certainly on our screens because we wouldn't have let him go. But I don't think it would have been an easy transition for him being on his own. I really don't. Maybe he would have done it with another comedian or a different setup with, narratively, I don't know, or sketch or, a comedy actor even. But, it's certainly a good question to ask. I don't know. But I mean, Bob was a family orientated guy though, wasn't he, Simon?
Yeah, he found happiness in his second marriage more so. I mean, he got divorced in the late 60s and had all his children with his first wife. But no, it was Jackie who originally was his secretary, and then he married her, I believe, in 1973. So he had nearly 30 years with somebody who became his best friend, his soulmate. Jackie was very much like a manager as well. I mean, she'd travel a lot with Bob, but he definitely needed that bond, that unity, that companionship. And he was a loving father. I mean, a lot of tragedy in his life. He lost both his sons. His eldest son, Gary, died of cerebral palsy related illness, and his other son, Simon, died of a drug overdose. So there's real sadnesses there. And he's a human. So what's always interesting is how he still managed. He was the old guard, the old trooper, how he dealt with that pain and tragedy was to go out and do a gig that night. And you'd never have known. You'd sit in the audience, go, he's on fire tonight, but you'd never know what was behind that stellar mask, that sort of good old school, get up there, we've got a show to do, rather than collapsing in a corner.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's what makes a play like this so layered. Because even though we don't touch on those subjects necessarily, they're very much deep-rooted in their psyche, and we try to our best ability, just tap into a little bit of that, a little bit of the spirit of those actual people that existed. And I think having all those stories and that information is so vital, so very helpful as well. I remember meeting Sean Foley, the director, who said that he heard a lovely story about Eric going to see Martin Shaw at the National Theatre. And Martin was in Are You Lonesome Tonight, playing Elvis Presley. It was a massively successful piece in the Olivier Theatre. And Eric sneaked in the back after it started and watched it. And at the end, everyone rose to their feet, a huge standing ovation, rapturous applause for minutes upon minutes, at which point Eric nipped out, went round to the stage door and said, "Hello, I'm Eric Morecambe. Can I go to Martin's dressing room?" The applause is still ringing out. Martin leaves the stage, opens the door to his dressing room to find Eric sitting there smoking his pipe with his legs crossed going, "What went wrong?"
Yeah, Bob was saying about Eric being driven by fear, but there must be another side to that coin as well. There must be something like a drug hit that they get from when it goes right. There's a fear of it going wrong always. But I mean, as actors, you're not there as stand-up comics, but are you getting a little bit of that?
Yeah. Monkhouse, I mean, talks a lot about emotional deprivation in his childhood without getting out violins. I've got a lot of synergy and parallels there. I do understand that some of those deficits he experienced. And for him, it was that I know he was a 6-year-old boy and he saw George Formby at the cinema in a movie called Boots, and all he understood was that I'm seeing this man who's in a make-believe world where there's this warmth and this thing called laughter. And he just said, all I know is I want to be that person. I want to be in that world. And he held that right to the grave. So for Bob, I think the audience was family. The laughter was approval. These were all basic things where he just wants his mum and dad to love him. So you can actually figure it out quite simply if you want to. It's not that complicated.
Basic psychology.
Yeah.
I mean, was that the same for Cooper? Did he just want people to love him?
Well, he didn't think he was funny. He didn't really understand why people laughed at him. But then saying that, he did always want, he didn't, if he was in a group of people talking, he used to go, like Barry Pryor tells a story, he used to sulk a bit. And so they'd be talking, and all of a sudden, out the corner of your eye, you'd see that Cooper had got the cards out, and then he'd start doing tricks to get the attention back to him. So, I mean, and then, the play's called The Last Laugh, and it's all about, we're all after, these comics were all after the last laugh. They were all, and then when you get a big laugh, what do? You immediately go searching for the next one. So, they obviously, it did feed them in a way to, comedy and getting the laughs, as it does all performers as well, as the recognition. You want approval as an actor. You want people to laugh if you're doing something funny. You want them to clap at the end. You want them to be silent if you're doing a serious speech. It's all the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I like the secrecy of this because when I made up as Bob, when I come out the dressing room door or the stage door, nobody recognizes me. It's wonderful. You leave it all behind.
Has there ever been, because you've all been playing these for 15 years or more, these parts, has there ever been a time when you thought, I want to stop doing this now? I want to be, because you get that a lot with performers. You get it with pop singers as well. I want to stop singing those songs that everybody calls for. I want to show my versatility. Have you ever felt that you've done all you can do and you'd like to move on?
Yeah, I mean, when Paul approached me saying, I'm going to make The Last Laugh into a piece of theatre, would you like to play Eric again? Part of me was thinking, well, what have I got to get out of this? I've kind of ticked the Eric box in one respect, but I've learned two things: that I can't say no to Eric Morecambe, and I can't say no to Paul Hendy.
Well, that's very
useful
nice
for you to know, Paul.
That's very useful to know. Yeah.
Yeah, I was ready to finish, Bob, really. I have a film script that we're trying to get off the ground at the moment. That was the Swan Song. Not out of dissatisfaction, but because I knew he's always going to be a part of me and my psyche. He's never going to leave, whether I don't have a choice over that. But I kind of thought, well, yeah, he's been done. But I think in terms of theatre, when Paul rang up and I thought, more of that film turned into theatre. Now could be a new avenue. So whenever it's something that's potentially fresh, to take Bob to that place and to test him and to make him feel a bit uncomfortable and challenge him, I thought, do you know what? Yeah, it's definitely worth doing. Not more of the same, but stretching it, because I think this play, it's not just a breeze and a walk in the park and a lovely reminiscence. There are some beautiful riptides and conversations that will leave you thinking, and that's great. So let's put Bob into that. It's a worthwhile conversation, and that's why I'm delighted to bring Bob back.
And there's still more for you to discover, you think?
100%. Just going through the script at the moment, I'm just finding new intonations in Bob's voice, and I'm researching, listening. I think he might say it like that, or he might say it like that.
Does he ever say penge? I love it when he says penge, does Bob?
Does he say?
Terrific. I'm having to litter the script with words like superlatives, like sensational and terrific and gosh.
By the end of this, I think we'll all be able to go on as each other. That'll be fine.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm learning your lines as well. Absolutely. Of course.
Damian, have you ever felt that you've had enough of Tommy Cooper?
No, do you know what? I've had a big enough gap between doing. So when I did Being Tommy Cooper the play, I did a tour of that. Then there was a few years before I really did The Last Laugh, and then it's been 7 years since we did that. So now The Last Laugh, the play's turned up. I'm quite excited about doing it. So I just think, because I'm interested to see what life it's got, from outside of the Fringe. But where else is it going to take us? So quite excited.
I'm really interested because of the fact that, because we don't know, was it the magic of the restriction of it being a short that made it do so well? Was it the fact it was compressed into 20 minutes? Or actually, is there something here that's got more legs? Well, we'll find out in Edinburgh for sure and on tour, but, we're even thinking about other contexts that maybe it might work on a cruise line, or is there a bigger television play to come out of this? And so what I find exciting here, and Paul's so good at this, is it's a suck it and see moment. I think we can put on a damn good show that people will enjoy, but we're going to be analysing it like Monkhouse, and we're going to be looking at it and going, is there something we can do more there? Or that? I just think it's got a lot of collateral and a lot of potential, and the quality as well.
And some half-hour sitcoms did make it as a feature length, and some never worked, did they?
But just to challenge the audience a bit more on other subjects within that realm is, I think I'm really looking forward to doing as well, which I know we are. It's not just a conversation. There's other theatrical aspects to it, which I'm looking forward to implementing under Paul's guidance too.
So Paul, the last word on The Last Laugh. Where is the script at the moment, and where's it going before you get to?
I literally this week sent the guys not a final draft. I don't think it is a final draft, in as much as I think when we get to the rehearsal room, we'll be finding little moments, and probably the guys in performance, once they open, will find new moments, just like, because they will be living those characters. But certainly, let's call it the rehearsal draft. The guys have that now, which I'm very excited about. It really has developed, and like Bob Monkhouse, I'd like to think I'm constantly, all three of us are constantly honing it. Simon called, last week and said, I don't think he'd say, and I love this, I don't think he'd say, I think he'd say, gosh. And I was like, yeah, mate, yeah, great. But, that attention to detail is what I think going to make it very special. The fact that we've got three great performers. They're not just three great actors. They're three great actors who really, really know and love these characters as much as I do. So they, and arguably more than I do, because I love all three of them across, they've got that level of in-depth knowledge, which is going to bring a whole new level. I'd like to think on the script, it's a good script, it reads really well. Well, these guys will elevate it through their knowledge and their love and their passion and their talent. So no, I'm very, very excited about it.
That was Paul Hendy, writer and director of The Last Laugh, with Bob Golding as Eric Morecambe, Damian Williams as Tommy Cooper, and Simon Cartwright as Bob Monkhouse, which will be in Studio 1 at Assembly George Square Studios, Edinburgh, at 1:20 p.m. every day, except Monday the 12th, from the 31st of July to the 25th of August 2024. For more information and tickets, go to www.edfringe.com or assemblyfestival.com and search for The Last Laugh. You've been listening to a podcast from British Theatre Guide. For more information, please visit britishtheatreguide.info.